Coming then to the next question, number 11. The Bhakti movement received a remarkable reorientation with the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Discuss. You know, I'll just, when I read this question, it reminds me of my state of mind at the examination hall. You know, I had really less idea of what was going on in this question. So I understood Bhakti movement, I read about it, but then the question is specially about, the focus of the question here is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You know, so and we read about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu but not in so much detail. So we read him as one person who's from the Odisha part, and then he has come up with the Bhakti movement and he was a participant there, but we don't study in so much detail, and it was asked in 250 words as a 15 marker. So this was a kind of a fix for me. You know, this might happen. You might come across a question which you are not really thorough with, or you don't have a very big idea of it, but still you have to attempt it. As I started and I said, सारे questions attempt करने हैं regardless कि थोड़ा आता है या सब आता है उसमें का. So I took this question as a challenge. So I saw Bhakti movement, and now we are coming to the 15 markers. So I'll tell you कि इन questions में scope रहता है कि आप थोड़ा detail में introduction के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं. You can take up some space, at least a couple of words, about 40-45 words की intro से लेके और उसके basic background है जो question का, you can cover. So since this question was sounding tough to me, I took up a lot of space to also write about the Bhakti movement. Only about 1/3 or less than 1/3 of I tried to explain the Bhakti movement. Then I also made map of India, and I know it's kind of rough, so I just tried to, you know, locate the different areas in our country where the Bhakti movement was there. And like for example, we have Mirabai here, we have Sant Tukaram, and we have Kabir here, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here, and Narsi Mehta, and other people who we read about in the Bhakti movement in our history when we read history. So I tried to locate the Bhakti movement saints on the map of India. Probably it might have added some value or some little points to it. Then after explaining what Bhakti movement is and what are its strands, you know, the strand about love for God and other such things, its contribution and all. So I just gave a brief idea of what Bhakti movement is, and then since the question is about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's not about Bhakti movement. So if you want full better marks, we have to focus on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then I straightforward continued to talk about him in detail. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then I first tried to locate him from where he was, and since I knew that his bhakti was specially for Lord Krishna, so then I said okay, I elaborated on those fronts, and we keep reading that his love for Krishna was very special. He tried to see Krishna as his own partner, as someone who he could share his love with. So that kind of a feeling, those kind of statements I tried to substantiate, that how he saw God not as a very big deity, a God that he'll have to you know, worship, but as a partner, as a loving partner with whom he can share every thought and have very lovely expressions for. So that emotional aspect of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu I tried to open up. And since we also had to talk in detail about it, I also you know, touched upon the literary section, that how might, you know, the devotion for Lord Krishna might have prompted so many bhajanas and other kirtans which are specially made for Lord Krishna, and that might have enriched the literature of the regional literature that might have come up, or the regional language that might have come up. So, you know, that's how I tried to cover up the answer for me, because it was kind of tough, but that's what I want to tell you. Whatever keyword you find in the answer, just try and elaborate on it. Sometimes we end up we don't really know it, but then please write whatever you know. Because ultimately it's about those 1, 2, 3 marks that you can pull up. Coming to next question, discuss whether formation of new states in recent times is beneficial or not for the economy of India. So the question is, formation of new states, that's what they are asking, that's what they have given, that formation of new states in recent times, okay. Note the word recent times, and is beneficial or not. They are asking you whether it is beneficial or not, but for what? For economy of India. They have put the focus of this question on the economy of India. But since it's a 250 word answer, you have scope to elaborate on other fronts as well. But more focus, or broader focus, has to be put on the economic front. So, you know what came to my mind to start the answer, I felt I should just tell about how the states could be formed. You know, how new states could be formed. How does our constitution really permit us to do that? So, we have the article 234 that contains such provisions. You can include the very article which forms the, which allows us to form new states. You know, the article that talks about the changing boundaries within the state, that is permissible. I started with that it is permissible and it can be formed. Then I put up some examples, that how Jharkhand was carved out, how, you know, Chhattisgarh was carved out of Madhya Pradesh, and very recent example of, you know, Telangana being carved out, right. So, these are some of the examples, and other you have a lot of multiple examples also in the northeastern region. Even those examples could be put up in your answer, and so you are just trying to tell these are the states that come up. Now we will discuss about it is beneficial or it is not beneficial for the economy of India, right. So, you can divide your answer in suitably into the positive, that it is yes, it is beneficial. So, how is it beneficial? I try to list some points, you know, that since we have a single government for a separate area, you can focus better on the needs of the people. The needs of the people, the aspirations of the people could be better addressed. Better economic opportunities could be there. Maybe in one big state all of it was not being focused, but if you have a smaller state, then maybe the rural industries or industrialization could be given a boost in the economy of that state. So, that way it could be beneficial. And talking about negative, that is it was not beneficial, then I tried to, some points were coming into my mind that, you know, if administratively you are trying to carve out a new state, then you require an entire setup. You have a new chief minister, entire you know, the civil service out there will be different. So, and those issues were there in news because of Telangana being the new state. So, those points I mentioned, that, you know, you will have administrative problems, funding problems which might be there. Already the funds are scarce with the center, and dividing them, you know, will also be an issue. So, this could be some of the economic challenges. And for the state, you know, for example, take the example of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. The capital has gone to Telangana. So, a lot of development that had earlier occurred in Hyderabad is no more there with Andhra. So, you know, they could have some economic problems there. Some resource rich regions could be taken away from the mother state. So, that could be a problem for the economy for the state, and if it is a problem for the economy of the state, then it is a problem for the economy of India. So, that is how I just gave a broad headline to it, and I concluded suitably that you know, it might be beneficial, but it depends on the circumstances. Other considerations like political and cultural considerations should also be there, and a balanced perspective needs to be taken. Coming to the next question, number 13, why indentured labour was taken by the British from India to other colonies? have they been able to preserve their cultural identity over there? Now, this question sounded really different, because they are talking about indentured labor, and we generally do not really focus on it. Sometimes when we study about the Pravasi Bharatiya, the people who have migrated, then we can learn about indentured labor, but we do not really focus on it. But still, this question has come, so you have to handle. So, why indentured labor was taken? And second, have they been able to preserve their cultural identity over there? This is a very interesting question, and for this I had a lot of things coming to my mind. So, I just first covered why it was taken. First, I tried to cover in my intro the British colonialism, that how the British had not only colonized our country but also other countries, and they were taking labor from India to other countries. So, why other countries they were taking? Because there were sugarcane plantations, or there were spices being planted in other countries, for example in Southeast Asia or in South America. So, there they needed labor, they needed cheap affordable labor who could work for them. And since we are talking about indentured labor, we can especially talk about the indentured labor. If you read about this in the NCERT or somewhere, you will find out that indentured labor are those who have an agreement with the British that they will complete it, and they are like just very close to being the slaves. So, they are not in a very good condition, they are not provided with very good working or living condition, but they somehow manage. So, I was reminded at that moment of the word girmitiya that Gandhiji might have coined sometime, word girmitiya. And this is a word which those people used because they were on an agreement and they couldn't say that, so they said girmitiya. Okay, so these are some of the things that were coming into my mind when I was thinking about indentured labor, and then I explained in a couple of points why they were taken, some plantation working, etc. The second part of the question, I had some clue about it. Have they been able to preserve their cultural identity over there? So yes, recently in the last year, on the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in January, what happened, people from across the world who are there in different countries, who are originally from India, but who are part of the political setup of that country, they were specially called here, and there was a kind of a political congregation that happened. So their interviews were held, and there those people said that we are very proud of our Indian cultural heritage. So some examples were coming to my mind, how in Southeast Asia, even today there are a Ramayana which is being performed as a theatre. You have Ramayana, Mahabharata being performed there. So these are our cultural traditions that they are trying to keep. Then Diwali being celebrated, in Southeast Asia and things like that. Since we are especially talking about indentured labor, you can also talk about maybe in United States as well, or South America they were taken, and how there they are keeping alive their cultural traditions. When you talk about cultural traditions, it's not only about the art forms, but it can also be about the food. So I mentioned how some of the food items of our country are especially made there, and they are keeping their identities alive. So I just tried to quote a lot of examples that came to my mind. Going next to the question 14. So the ideal solution of depleting groundwater resources in India is water harvesting system. How can it be made effective in urban areas? So look at the question. They are saying that they know that groundwater resources are depleting. That's a given fact, and they are also telling us that the ideal solution is water harvesting system. And then they are asking how it can be made effective in the urban areas. In the urban areas, how it can be effective. So I started the introduction by actually verifying this fact that yes, groundwater resources are depleting. And to my rescue was a report by the Niti Aayog recently launched, which talked about the groundwater contamination and talked about how water crisis might hit India. So I started with the fact that the Niti Aayog has come up with this report that talks about the depleting water resources in our country. and you know, some area, some facts that you might remember, you can add it up, said how water level is going down and how it is being polluted and how availability of water is very less. Okay, and so this is the problem. This is how we acknowledge it. And since it's a 250 word answer, you can spend some time here also. You can add up some more points that how yes, you are acknowledging that yes, the water resources in the country are depleting. Coming next to the water harvesting thing. Since the question asks you about water harvesting, you can talk about water harvesting system in detail. So you know, since they also talked about urban area, I first explained what was water harvesting. Whatever water it's falling around your residential or commercial areas, actually conserving the rainwater, and either we are you know, transferring it to the groundwater to recharge the aquifers, the groundwater, or we are using it again for the you know, for the plants or the trees that are planted. So that's how I first introduced water harvesting. And since the question asks you about urban areas, what came to my mind was this little diagram that I made. So I made a building, something like this, I don't remember exactly, but I made a building like this, something looked like a building, and then I showed that, you know, water is coming, these are the clouds, please excuse me for the bad drawing. So you had some rainwater coming up, and so whatever rain is being accumulated, you have a kind of a pipe system out there, and you know, this pipe is actually transferring things in your ground. So it's going inside the ground, it's recharging. So this was a very quick thing that just came to my mind. I just thought that this might supplement my answer, since we're talking about something very basic like water harvesting. So how it can be made more effective in urban areas. So that's how in urban areas I said, you know, the policies could be made such that whatever new colonies are coming up, you know, you can make it mandatory for the people to have, you could have some nudge policy that by default you are having the this water harvesting thing in your either plot, your separate plot, or your building, your apartment, and there could be much more environmental awareness. Since we have a lot of concrete jungles in urban areas, and in you know, in cities like Bangalore, in cities where you know, it is said that it might soon be running out of water, and you have a lot of Silicon Valley hub coming up in Bangalore. So some point I also listed like the commercial establishments, the software companies that are coming up, they might be it might be made compulsory for them that in their buildings, in their commercial houses, they have to have this water harvesting system. And there was an example of some kind of an office where each and every drop of water is utilized then and there. So I just gave an example that, you know, this is there, this could be done easily. And you know, towards the end, since the word was ideal solution, and ideal solution, you don't have ideal solution to everything. So you know what came to my mind, that I should just add up towards the end some other solutions. For example, you know, not wasting water at your home, right? Trying to utilize every drop of it, then not polluting the lakes so that the water could be used for drinking purposes, right? This could be some other solution. Other such solution for water management in the city, I just tried to mention it. So this is how I tried to conclude that, you know, there could be other solutions as well apart from water harvesting that can come for water resources. Coming to the next question, 15, so you have 5 more. 15 is defining blue revolution. Explain the problems and strategies for pisciculture development in India. See, the question is defining blue revolution. So they are saying, while you define blue revolution, first define blue revolution for us, then explain the problems, and then give the strategies for pisciculture development in India. So if you look at the question, it is very organized. The question is very organized in the way it asks you. Step by step you have to answer each part of the question. So please highlight the word define, then explain the problem and strategies for pisciculture development. That's how I took it, as a 3-step approach towards this answer. And So I started with blue revolution. As it is asked, please define it. So you can ask, you can say that blue revolution could be, where the production of fish or marine culture in the country is increased, okay. That is something related to that. You can frame it in your own words then and there. That is how you can define it. Then what you can do, I also came across some kind of a fact regarding the production of fish or prawn or any marine fishery in the current year. So that fact was with me. I just quoted it in the introduction part as well, just to give the examiner an understanding that yes, I know about the current situation of blue revolution and the current situation of this fishery sector in our country. Then explain the problem. That's the second part. So you can divide the remaining part of the answer into two equal parts. Explain the problems and the strategies for pisciculture. So we read about this when we read about economic geography. So their problems. So we read about the problems, that how there is old technology right now with us. We don't have modern technology. There's lack of funds. There's lack of training for the fishermen that are coming in. Then there are political problems. For example, referring to the problems when our fishermen cross the boundaries and reach Sri Lanka and somehow they are caught. So that's a kind of a hindrance for people living in Tamil Nadu or Kerala. So that's a problem for our pisciculture as well. So some of these problems I tried to list it out, whatever that came to my mind there. And since also we are a tropical country, so naturally also the fish produce that we have, it cannot be preserved for longer time. It might rot or something like that. So these are also the natural conditions also somehow don't favor us. But then the strategy is talking about the second part of the answer. Strategies for agriculture, for pisciculture. So there I talked about the recent schemes that have come up in the pisciculture. Very recently we had a scheme where instead of the fish trawlers, now better equipped boats and ships would be provided to the fishermen. So that could be mentioned here, that could be one strategy. And other such strategies, other such policies could be mentioned. What came to my mind was new technology should be utilized. Then export orientation should be there. And what also came to my mind was that not only marine fishery, but the freshwater aquaculture could also be improved, and this could be done in states like Odisha, etc., and where we have big lakes like Chilka Lake and stuff. So that's how I broadly handle this question. Coming to the next question, 16, what's the significance of industrial corridors in India? Identifying industrial corridors, explain their main characteristics. So what, I had a kind of a thing, I was not really able to remind myself this industrial corridors. This is again a question for me that had caught me, but I said no, whatever I had ever learned regard to industrial corridors, I will write it. So since it was significance of industrial corridors, and I was reminded of the north-south, the east-west, and the quadrilateral, which we have for the industrial corridor, I tried to mention those in the answer. I started with what an industrial corridor might mean and how the multimodal connectivity in industrial corridor or seamless connectivity from one urban area to the other, how it could be very important for boosting the economy of the country. And so the significance in it, I wrote that since I also wrote one point that yes, since now the goods and services taxes is there and we are integrating the country's economy, the industrial corridors can actually accelerate this entire process. They can improve the logistics time that is taken in our country. There is some kind of report which tells us that in logistics, it takes a lot of time in our country to take a product from one place to another. So that also I mentioned that since India is a growing economy, India is a developing economy, the role of logistics and connectivity is very important. and identifying industrial corridors. So I just made a map of the country, India, and I tried to draw the routes, the quadrilaterals, the north, south, and the corridors that are there, and I just mentioned briefly the important cities that fall on those corridors. You can find their names in the NCRTs and the economic geography portion. You can find those corridors. I briefly mentioned things around it. Coming to next question 17. I was very happy when I saw this question, because the question is, mention core strategies for the transformation of aspirational districts in India and explain the nature of convergence, collaboration and competition for its success. So aspirational district program, especially for me, I don't know, I felt that this program is really good, because we are then trying to focus on the very backward sections, those sections of the Indian society or geography which which have not been paid much attention to as of now, till now. So I felt that that's a game changer. I don't know what went through me. I just went out, saw the document of the aspirational district program, got it printed for me. So I had this 2-3 page document of Niti Aayog which had explained everything in detail with regard to ADP. So I was really happy seeing this program. Mentioning core strategies. So there are certain core strategies, if you go through the key terms, that they work on collaboration, work on convergence, and other word that you can find, you can mention it here. So I made something like this just to reflect the idea behind the aspirational district program, that we are trying to collaborate, converge on specific areas, on specific pointers. For example, we have pointers of health, of education, training, agriculture and some other thing. So these are the pointers on which the yes, there are key performance based indicators, key performance based indicators, and there will be healthy competition, since there will be ranking also, So I try to somehow just diagrammatically through Venn diagrams just try to express the spirit of aspirational district program and explain the nature of convergence, collaboration and competition. So explaining the nature, I took up each word and I tried to explain. I tried to also mention the names of some of the districts which fall in the aspirational district program. For example, from my state we have Vidisha, and not really sure as of now. I'm unable to, we have Khandwa, I'm not sure about Vidisha. So I tried to mention a couple of districts which are there as a part. Some districts from Chhattisgarh could also be mentioned. And I was listening to Prime Minister's talk on the aspirational district program, and he said that I am loving to work with the young administrators of these states. So I also mentioned that spirit, that this, since it's a new program, working with new and young administrators, since they have a better spirit for change, that could also be a game changer for these districts. That's how I tried to cover it. 18. Women's movement in India has not addressed the issues of women of lower social strata. Substantiate your view. Now this is a very typical question where they are giving you a statement and this statement is tilted on one side. Notice what the question says. It says that it has not addressed the issues. See, nothing in the society, country, economy is black and white. You just can't lean on one side. There are going to be grey areas, there are going to be areas where things do overlap. So just a moment. So in this, women's movement in India is not addressed, can't be there. Sometimes it might have also addressed. So how I tried to divide the answer into two parts. First I tried to say, yes, it has not addressed. Just trying to agree with the statement, giving the statement some respect of its own. I tried to write some points that women's movement, for example, political movements that have been there, They have focused on women who are already in a powerful position, who belong to some powerful families and who are there in the urban areas, women who already know a lot about the issues, who have a better exposure. So that's how they have been very powerful, and that is how they have not focused on the lower strata of the society, the women who are there. So just trying to agree with this statement. Some other example, if I could quote, I try to see the cultural movement. Sometimes cultural movement, you have artists who are coming up and they make a group, but that's very urban and that does not seep through the strata of the society. So just briefly agreeing with this statement, then I said ki no, there have been a lot of movements which have also tried to cater to the needs of the women who are there in the lower strata or who are there in the margins. So talking about women in lower strata, what women could be there? Women from lower caste, okay, women who are belonging to very rural, remote areas, or women who are tribals. Okay. Some of these, for example, the tribal issue could be mentioned here, that yes, organization of tribal women has not been really effective. This could be included here, that no, it has not been addressed. In the second part, how it has been addressed, you can mention the example, the very successful example of India, though it's not a women's movement per se, the Self-Employed Women's Association, and I think Ms. Bhatt is the head of it. So yes, this is a women's organization that has catered to the needs of very poor women in the lower strata. You can give this example that it has covered it. Narmada Bachao Andolan, headed by Ms. Medha Patkar. So it was not a women's movement per se, but it had a lot of women's participation coming in, especially from the rural sections of the society, rural and remote areas of Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh as well. So this could be an example where yes, it has been addressed. We are saying that. Women's movement, may I also somehow briefly mention the self-help group, though it's not a women's movement per se. I just said that that's a kind of a place where women organize, come together, and even women from very lower strata, they are now coming up and saving some amount of rupees, especially in the southern states, and they have benefited well. So that's how I tried to, but I focused more on the part that yes, it has been addressed. In the conclusion, I said that yes, there are still women in the margin. For example, women from the minority communities, from the Muslim community or the other communities, Buddhists, who have not been able to organize, and their thing has not been coming out. So I just briefly also mentioned that how the All India Muslim Mahila Andolan, which was there, which also fought a case against triple talaq. That is one of the movement from the community, from the Muslim community of women that is coming out. That's a brief example that you can use to end it up. Coming to the last second question, globalization is generally said to promote cultural homogenization, but due to this, cultural specificities appear to be strengthened in the Indian society. Elucidate. See, when you have the key term as elucidate, elucidate is like trying to give some example, trying to explain the person in a very easy manner, trying to give some example, real life thing that's happening, trying to illustrate it. So globalization is generally said to promote cultural homogenization. So in the first part of the answer, I tried to agree with this statement that yes, some part of the cultural homogenization is going on. I started with intro part by defining what globalization meant to me. Globalization is like interconnectedness and interrelationship between the economies, people, culture of different countries. How it can lead to cultural homogenization, that was the first part. Cultural homogenization, how did it lead? For example, we all now wear jeans very frequently. That's a kind of a wear that we have taken from the Western society. The food that we are eating, the food habits have been changing because we are having working women now, and we are having the impact of the international society on the forms of entertainment also. can be something where our cultures are getting more homogenized. This has been the impact of globalization. So, you kind of agreeing with the statement, but due to it, cultural specificities appear to be strengthened in the Indian society. See, notice the fact that the question is itself trying to focus on the strengthening of cultural specificities. Now, I was wondering what these cultural specificities are being talked about. So, what came to my mind at that moment was, for example, due to globalization, what has also happened is the media has played a huge role. For example, you have the social media, you have platforms like YouTube where you have also videos coming from the Indian country. So, the specific cultural traditions of regional levels, they are now being showcased on an international platform. I was reminded of how Navratri is celebrated at such a grand level. It's not more a puja, but like of a gathering where all people come together to sing and dance. They spend their time together. Internationally, this is being done. This is being broadcasted on the internet and the TVs. So this is cultural specificity that is now being strengthened. Talk about other things like such regional festivals like Ganesh Chaturthi. Now, Ganesh Chaturthi was a festival that started very late in Maharashtra, but now today it's taken an all India fervor. So this globalization has played a huge role because media has now highlighted how important that particular deity could be for the entire country. So these are some specificities which are strengthened due to globalization. And for example, I was also reminded of the dances, how the classical dances are now getting a platform at an international level, how our folk songs, especially the folk songs. See, folk songs, I was reminded of how the Rajasthani singers, they are now getting an opportunity to perform at a global level. So our cultural traditions are now being especially encouraged globally. When you talk about folk songs, I was also reminded of the tribal handicrafts. Tribal handicrafts are our cultural specificities. But now since countries like Europe etc., they are demanding a lot of our handicrafts because they feel that this is something they really like. So, these are being strengthened. So, I try to focus on the strengthening part. Now, finally coming to the last question of the paper, General Studies paper 1, and that question was, communalism arises either due to power struggle or relative deprivation. Argue by giving suitable illustrations. Again, you have illustrations as a word. That means, you'll have to illustrate, give some real life examples here. So, in order to begin this question, see, this question sounds a bit difficult, but if you try and understand it, it is not that difficult. You know communalism, we all read communalism in our General Studies paper 1 syllabus. It's mentioned as a term. So, I started by first defining what communalism meant to me. In my own words, you can take any definition which you find, which you might have learned, that communalism is when two groups are competing for their own interest and they feel that their interests are antagonistic to each other communities' interest. And so the question is actually about the reason for communalism. It arises, they have given two reasons to you, power struggle and relative deprivation. And they are asking, how does it arise? Whether it is because the first one or the second one, or you have something else to tell us. So, by giving suitable illustrations, I first started by communalism, what it meant. I gave some examples, how it developed in our country, in the Indian national movement, how it was developed because of some divide and rule policies of the British, how it was developed in our country. And then I tried to pick up the keywords from the question. The keywords are power struggle and relative deprivation. Whatever examples were coming to my mind, with both of these words, I tried to list them out. For example, in relative deprivation, when we study the Indian national movement, we study the fact that the Muslim community came later in the direction of education, and you know, already the Hindu community, especially only the Brahmins from the Hindu community, had already taken a lot of government jobs. So they felt relatively deprived, and so I think this could be where you can again you know, focus on this. You can mention it here, that how initially the community feels that they are relatively deprived, okay, and how that might lead to communalism. See, communalism is a very violent form of expressing opposition to a community. It's like feeling that our interests, my interest and your interest cannot just stay together. So that kind of a feeling, whatever incidences you can mention, there have been certain riots also in the country. Communal riots have also taken place in some states like UP or other places. So you could give some examples there. And talking about relative deprivation, how relative deprivation occurs, that one community is progressing a lot, and in relation to that community, the communities are in relation, maybe in absolute level the community itself has not developed, but in relation to that community maybe there could be a relative deprivation feeling. And coming to power struggle, you know, if there is limited power, or if the political administrative setup in the country is not representing the minority sections or some social groups, then there could be a demand for power struggle. So I just tried to use some of the examples and try to substantiate my point, and try to end, coming to the end of this question, you know, don't leave I don't leave such kind of questions into a very bleak thing that, you know, this is it and nothing could be done. No, there should be some hope at the end of the tunnel, some silver lining. So I just mentioned that even today the Indian society is a society with unity in diversity, and we coexist together in harmony, and how different initiatives are taken, how Ramzan is also celebrated, and how even Ram Navami is there together, you have Hanuman Jayanti, all the things being celebrated together. So this could be some examples which you can say that despite the fact that communalism somehow finds its place in the mainstream events, but still it is just a background thing, and it's time that we can end the communalism in the society. So I took you through the entire General Studies paper 1, and I tried to cover in little bit details, minute details, how I thought about it, what were my thoughts about the questions, and I just hope that you are able to gain from this clip, and I could add some value to your own thought process and your answer writing. Thank you so much, and all the very best to you.